footprints of incidents. Every country has its own footprints of creating the crimes or the incident which happens from the land there. Somehow, India does not have that kind of a footprint there. And that's why I want to say from this forum that we don't believe, and certainly I endorse Dr. Nanda, that we don't believe in the offensive activity or creating that kind of a malicious activity there. We need to work together. We need to have a system together where do we report. And and that's a message I came here to share with you all, that until and unless we come together, we work together, we share the information transparently, we will not be able to move forward in this era, which is totally virtual, borderless, and very difficult to handle in time to come. With this appeal, I thank Alok and our organizers and my seniors over here for giving me opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for joining us, sir. And of course, thank you for enlightening us on various issues. May I now request Shri S.N. Pradhan, IPS IDG Modernization, to please join us on stage and appreciate sir's presence for joining us on this very, very special day. So may I request you to please join us on stage yet again. Let's put our hands together as gentlemen join us on stage. I'm sure we have more energy than that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
He's coming, so ask him to wait.
So we believe in seeing your smile on stage more often. So may I request both the gentlemen to come on stage yet again for a group picture, and we'd also like to present you the memento. So once again, may I request both of you to please join us on stage yet again with some more applauses in place. Thank you. Thank you so very much indeed. Moving on to our next keynote speaker, which is the executive keynote speaker, ladies and gentlemen, on cyber readiness challenges. I'd like to invite on stage Sri Shantanu Ghosh, Vice President, Data Center Security and Managing Director, India, Symantec Corporation. A warm, warm welcome.
This cyber threat is one of the most serious economic and national security challenges we face as a nation.
There's a strong likelihood that the next Pearl Harbor that we confront could very well be a cyber attack.
Our railroad, our bank, our pipeline are all potential targets.
We will suffer a catastrophic cyber attack. The clock is ticking.
Use these mics. Thank you. So, Hollywood has seen an easy formula in superhero movies, right? I mean, so superhero movies are spy movies. For a long time, you would notice that the villains, specifically in those movies, have always been technologically savvy, right? I mean, even from my childhood days, I remember that when you saw the villains, I mean, in a Bond movie, for example, I mean, you would see them using a lot of gadgets, etc. It was not only the good guys who used them, the bad guys were really sophisticated. And what is happening in the real world is that the bad guys are beginning to catch up. There isn't really that much of a gap any longer in the technology savvy and how sophisticated the bad guys really are. But as we talk about the good guys and bad guys, because those of us in security, I mean, always try to think of ourselves as the good guys, and there is an adversary out there which is a bad guy. I want to point out that, just like Dr. Rai pointed out, it's a thin line between good and bad, right? Because there is you and then there is your adversary. And today, what's happening is that everybody uses technology in their day-to-day lives and also in their prime if they are politically motivated or financially motivated to do something, I mean, chances are very high that you would leverage technology to do that. So in that, let's try, let me paint a picture of what's going on in the world around us. So a quick quiz. I mean, which of these devices actually do we think have been used in a cyber attack? I mean, when we think of hacking or attacks, it's still commonplace for us to actually imagine that hacking happens when you're using a personal computer on your desktop, right? But actually, if you look at it, the answer for this is obviously all three of these devices actually have been used recently in some kind of a cyber event or a cyber attack. So Londoners recently found out that there was a new generation of trash cans that had been distributed in the streets all over. So it was pretty cool because they had these electronic screens on them, and you could actually display ads there. But after a few days, somebody realized that these trash cans were actually surreptitiously tracking people around them. And what they would do is essentially track Wi-Fi signals that were coming out of your transceivers on your mobile phones, right? Most of us carry smartphones, as you know, and in London, anybody who walks past those trash cans, they were able to ID the person, and the startup which actually created this concept very proudly said that we are going to cookie the real world. What they meant is, just like when you move on a web browser, I mean, there are cookies through which you actually can be tracked, right? Where you're going, where you're coming, when you're coming back. And many of us have actually been threatened by that idea because we see it as a lack of privacy. That has invaded the real world, so to say, through the use of this kind of technology. Because what those guys realized is that trash cans, I can replace it with a small piece of software and hardware combination, which can essentially do that by leveraging technology that today exists in your cell phone and what they have actually built into the trash can. So incidentally, there was a court order which stopped the use of that kind of technology in London. But moving on to the next one, I mean, this, I realized, I was buying a smart TV, and as you know, today, the only kind of TV you can buy if you really want a high-end TV is a smart TV, whether you want those features or not. So if you need a high picture quality, all of the latest stuff from a television, you automatically get a smart television. And a smart television essentially has usually a built-in camera, and it has that camera because it now can detect motion. So instead of using your TV remote, the idea is that you should be able to wave your hands and change channels, right? And the second thing is, they also have apps. Now, when you think of apps, obviously you can immediately, those of us in security will immediately look at that as another point of vulnerability, because now the television is sophisticated enough that it can connect to your Wi-Fi network at home. It can also use the internet to, for example, pick up videos from YouTube and let you watch it just like any other television channel. It can also let you do your Facebook on your television. But now that's another point of vulnerability, and it's not a theoretical vulnerability. This has actually been recently not only demonstrated as a vulnerability by being able to take control of your television camera, for example, the camera that exists on your television. In fact, many consumers may not even realize that there is a camera which is looking down on their living room. Now, if you hack into that over the Wi-Fi network, you actually have control of it. But there has been at least one attack as well recorded which actually did that in real life. And the third one is a baby monitor, again a real life incident. Now, baby monitors are used to let parents on the remote side of house figure out that their baby is awake and crying or something like that. I mean, it's very commonly used in Western countries, and I have seen several people in India buy them as well. Now, the latest versions of the baby monitor, no surprises, are again internet devices. They connect to the internet and allow you to actually check on the audio video from a remote location on your smartphone. But recently, a couple in Texas suddenly heard weird noises coming in from their baby's room. And when they went to investigate, they realized that there was somebody talking obscenities to their 3-year-old kid. Now, thankfully, the kid was actually sleeping, and secondly, the kid was actually born deaf, so the baby wouldn't have heard. It was mostly for the parents to actually listen in this particular case. But the fact is that somebody had actually hacked into that baby monitor and was watching their kid and also saying these things over a remote connection. So that's the kind of world that we live in today. technology is something that not only the good guys use to get more productive. All of these devices, as you can see, are devices that actually help us do things in a much more simpler fashion, whether it is being entertained, in being able to actually run our daily lives, or even our businesses. But then the same devices also introduce vulnerabilities, and because of the pace at which technology has been moving, vulnerabilities, etc., that keep coming in, newer threat vectors that keep getting created, are constantly being exposed by the bad guys who are equally technologically savvy today. So that, I mean, these are just news items of the same things that I showed you. So there's a guy there trying to use the trash can, not knowing that people can now figure out how far he is moving from that trash can by observing how the range of the signal varies and then gets caught up in another one. Also, it is not necessarily the financially motivated attackers who are always doing things. There are people with political motivations. There are people with nation-state backing who are also using technology, right, to do things that you may find detrimental to your safety. So, for example, recently the Associated AP, I mean, which is one of the largest news sources around the world, which a lot of media and publications actually source their news from, their Twitter account was actually hacked very recently, and there was an breaking news which was published at that time, which said that there have been 2 explosions in the White House and that the President of the United States had been injured. Now, immediately the Dow Jones actually crashed as a result of that, because nowadays things happen instantaneously. I mean, news spreads fast online, and businesses react immediately to the news. So the Dow Jones actually spiked heavily negative until quickly the White House actually came out and said that there is nothing like that which happened. It's probably a hack attack, which AP then confirmed. And eventually the Syrian Electronic Army, which has been making its presence known in the online world, actually came out and said that they were responsible for it. They subsequently went on to say that they had hacked into the president's election campaign as well. I'll give you yet another incident which shows you the sophistication and how the real world and the cyber world are actually colliding. In my opinion, we now use the term cyber because it's a newer phenomena, we think, but I think over a period of time you'll realize that all crime, in fact, you don't have to really say cyber crime, because most of the kinds of crime and espionage in the real world will always have a cyber component to it. So in this particular case, a French company, and the illustration there is of a personal assistant of a vice president of a French company received an email, and while she was looking at that email, it was an attachment of an invoice of some kind. She got a call from a person who was speaking in perfect French, claimed to be a vice president of a different department, calling up to say that, hey, you should open up this invoice quickly and look at it and then take some follow-up actions. And when she did that, she got infected. And this was a targeted attack. And essentially, as you can see, this was a combination attack. And we called it Francophone because, we saw this all over France. So there was a group doing very targeted attacks to companies to steal information. And the first way in which they got them infected so that they could take control of those computers was by not only using a malware in those emails, but following up on the telephone. So this was a combination of real life and cyber coming together to actually create a targeted crime where they were fairly successful because they went around to 5 or 6 different companies and they probably were able to steal a whole bunch of sensitive information from those computers. So if you look at just the month of September, as one of the large security companies, we track what's going on in the cyber attack, cyber world. And so just in the month of September, we noticed that on just September 4th, there was a targeted attack against companies which used the G20 summit, which was going on in St. Petersburg, to actually get some of the people in those organizations targeted and pull off information. On September 6th, we noticed yet another new banking Trojan, which was sophisticated enough and was specifically targeting a set of user community by not only actually, stealing credentials, but also making them download something on their mobile phones so that it could even intercept the second level two-factor authentication. As you know, most of the banks nowadays, they will send you a one-time password on the mobile phone. So this attack essentially not only actually was, trying to steal your credentials from your personal computing site, but also had a way by which they could actually pick up that second factor from your mobile device and use a combination of mobile and desktop to be able to actually steal your credentials and transfer money. On September 9th, again, the people with cybercrime, motivations of cybercrime are very up to date with the news. And this one shows that they use current events to their advantage. So the G20 summit was a current event that was happening, and they used it to actually get people infected. That was a similar one where the chemical attack in Syria, that was used to essentially post some malicious code and get people infected so that they could do an incursion into their systems, and then thereon go to either surreptitiously see what was going on within the network or to steal stuff. Similarly, there have been several. So if you look at all of this, what I'm trying to illustrate, I don't need to describe each one of them in great detail, but the idea is that even in the course of a month, there were several very targeted and sophisticated attacks that specifically actually focused on a particular category of victims. These were not the kind of attacks that you would see in the past. In the past, there would be attacks where you created viruses which you just threw out in the wild, infecting thousands and hundreds of thousands of computers in the world. It was like a fisherman going out with a net. Right now, these guys are fishing for a very specific fish. So they know who they are after, they are very motivated, and they also are very targeted. So each one of them, there were examples of 6 targeted attacks which use sophisticated real world and cyber world assets together to get to their goals. And as you can see here, the victim community is no one country or one group of people. The attackers are also motivated in various different ways. So in some cases, the attackers have political motives. Others, there is some clear state backing behind it. And in other cases, they continue to be financially motivated. And then there are, of course, we should not forget the anarchists. I did see somebody with an anonymous mask roaming around with a plastic gun sometime back here. So I don't know where he is now. But that is one of the trends that all of us are seeing around the world. So if you look at all the stuff that's going on, these are some of the big sophisticated attacks that happened. Dr. Rai talked about Stuxnet. This is one that we worked very closely with CERT India on. Stuxnet, for those of you who did not hear about it, was one of the most sophisticated malware attacks that was actually designed and conducted. And there were a lot of unique things about it. So for example, a typical virus, if I were to use the analogy of a unsophisticated explosive device that many of the terrorists use today, then Stuxnet was like a sophisticated cruise missile in its level of advancement, because the code, when we actually reverse engineered it, we realized that it was really, really sophisticated. And that is the reason we immediately knew that it was heavily funded and also potentially state-backed, because that kind of sophisticated resources were not really available to the general set of attackers at that time, at that point in time. Now this one also demonstrated how you could not only use malware to steal or to destroy information assets, but you can actually destroy something in the real world. Because in this particular case, Stuxnet, it's pretty much through circumstantial evidence, is clear at this point in time that it was meant to attack the centrifuges which was being used in Iran at that moment in time, right? And it successfully destroyed that and put back that entire program by almost a year.